Ambassador stood at the great window of the council tower and watched his world die slowly. The sky above Velar Prime had always been beautiful. It was painted in shades of purple and gold, filled with floating cities that drifted like clouds. His people, had spent thousands of years building those cities. They had created art and music and science. They had never built weapons. Now 200 warships hung in orbit above his planet. They were ugly things, black and sharp, covered in guns and armor. The Dominion had come for conquest, and they had nothing to fight back with. Was old. His feathers had turned from bright blue to pale gray many years ago. He had served as ambassador for 40 cycles, speaking with dozens of species, signing treaties, building friendships. He had believed that words and agreements could protect his people. He had been wrong. The commander called himself. He had appeared on every screen across Velar Prime 3 days ago. His face was hard and cruel, covered in dark scales. His eyes were the color of blood. He had smiled when he delivered his message. "You have 72 hours to surrender," had said. "Give us your planet, your resources, and your people. Serve the Dominion and some of you will live. Refuse, and we will burn your cities from orbit. There will be nothing left but ash." Had immediately sent messages to every ally they had. They were members of the Galactic Accord, a union of peaceful species that had promised to protect each other. Surely someone would come. They were the first to respond. They were an old species, powerful and respected. Their ambassador spoke with sadness in his voice. "We are sorry, friend, our fleets are needed elsewhere. We cannot spare any ships. We wish you luck." They sent a similar message. So did thee and a dozen other species. They all expressed deep concern. They all condemned the aggression. None of them offered to help. The Galactic Accord itself held an emergency meeting, watched the broadcast with growing horror. The representatives talked for hours. They debated and argued and proposed resolutions. In the end, they voted to issue a formal statement of disapproval. It meant nothing. It would not stop a single weapon. Understood then what the Accord truly was. It was not an alliance. It was a collection of species who had agreed to trade with each other and ignore each other's problems. When real danger came, every species looked after itself. Below the council tower, the streets were filled with his people. Millions were trying to escape, but there was nowhere to go. Their ships were designed for peaceful travel, not speed. They had already destroyed the few vessels that tried to run. The rest were trapped on the planet, waiting for the end. Watched families huddle together. He saw parents holding their children, trying to keep them calm. He saw the elderly sitting in gardens, singing old songs about peace and beauty. His people did not know how to fight. They did not know how to hate. They only knew how to love and create and hope. And hope was dying. His assistant, a young named, approached him with a data pad. "Ambassador, the deadline is in 6 hours. They are moving into bombardment formation. We have received no offers of assistance from anyone." Took the data pad but did not look at it. There is no one left to ask. "There is one species," said quietly, "the humans." Made a sound that might have been a laugh. The humans were newcomers to the galaxy. They had only joined the Accord 15 cycles ago. Most species considered them primitive and strange. They were soft creatures with no natural weapons, no scales or claws or venom. They came from a small planet on the edge of known space. They had few ships and fewer allies. "The humans cannot help us," said. "They are too far away, they are too weak. They have no reason to care about us. We have barely spoken with them." "Perhaps," agreed, "but we have nothing to lose." Considered this. The young one was right. They had already asked everyone else. What harm could one more message do? He returned to his desk and composed a transmission. He did not use formal diplomatic language. He did not speak of treaties or obligations. He simply told the truth. "To any human vessel in range. This is Ambassador of Velar Prime. We are under attack by the Dominion. 200 warships surround our world. In 6 hours they will begin killing us. We have asked for help from every species we know. No one is coming. I do not know if you can hear this. I do not know if you care, but we are peaceful people and we are about to die. If there is any kindness left in this galaxy, please help us." He sent the message on every frequency. Then he sat back and waited. Hours passed. The screens showed the fleet moving into position. Their weapons began to charge, glowing with terrible energy. The people in the streets looked up at the sky and held each other close. No response came from the humans. No response came from anyone. Closed his eyes. He had done everything he could. He had spent his life believing in peace, in cooperation, in the goodness of other species. Now he would die knowing that belief was a lie. The galaxy was cold and empty, and no one cared about the weak. When the first weapons fired, his people would burn. Their cities would fall. Their art and music and dreams would become dust. And the rest of the galaxy would watch and do nothing, because that was what the galaxy did. He opened his eyes one last time and looked at the stars. Somewhere out there, the humans had received his message. They were probably ignoring it, just like everyone else. Did not blame them. Why would they risk themselves for strangers? Why would anyone? He prepared himself for death and waited for the fire to come. Captain Danny was drinking coffee in his cabin when the distress signal arrived. He was a man of 43 years, with gray in his short brown hair and old scars on his hands and face. He had been a soldier for 20 years. He had seen wars and death and things that still woke him at night. Now he commanded the USS, a patrol vessel watching the empty edge of human space. It was boring work. Nothing ever happened out here. That was why the signal surprised him. His communications officer, a young woman named Price, called him to the bridge. "Captain, you need to hear this." Danny listened to the recording. The voice was strange, clearly not human, but the translator made the words clear. A peaceful species was about to be destroyed. They had asked everyone for help. No one was coming. The voice sounded tired and sad, and completely without hope. "Where is this from?" Danny asked. "A planet called Velar Prime," answered. "It's 9 days away at our fastest speed. The message is already 12 hours old. They have less than 6 hours before the attack begins." 9 days. The math was simple and terrible. Even if they left right now, they would arrive 8 days too late. They would already be dead. There was nothing they could do. Commander Lisa Vance stood beside him. She was his executive officer, a tall woman with sharp eyes and a sharper mind. She had served with Danny for 5 years. She knew what he was thinking. "Danny, we cannot reach them in time. This is not our fight. The Galactic Accord has rules about intervention. If we involve ourselves, we could start a war between humanity and the Dominion." "They have 200 ships," Danny said quietly. "We have one." "Exactly, this is suicide." Danny stared at the screen showing the star chart. Velar Prime was a tiny dot, impossibly far away. He had never met he knew nothing about them. They were strangers on the other side of the galaxy. But he kept hearing that voice. That tired, hopeless voice asking for help that would never come. "Get me Admiral," Danny said. The connection took several minutes. Admiral Pete was an old man with white hair and kind eyes. He had been Danny's mentor years ago before the colonial wars. They had fought together, bled together. They trusted each other completely. "Danny," the Admiral said, "I assume you received the signal." "I did. I want to help them." Sighed, "I expected you would. You always were too good for this galaxy." He paused. "Officially, I am ordering you to remain at your post. The Galactic Accord forbids intervention without proper authorization. We could face serious consequences if you involve yourself." "I understand, sir." "Unofficially," continued, his voice dropping lower, "there is a prototype slipstream corridor at coordinates I am now sending you. It was meant for testing next month. It could get you to Velar Prime in 16 hours. The technology is unstable. It could tear your ship apart. but it is your only chance. Danny looked at the coordinates appearing on his screen. His heart beat faster. The Accord will deny any connection to your actions, said. If you fail, you will be labeled as criminals. Your careers will be over. Your families may face difficulties. You will be alone out there. I understand, sir. Smiled sadly. I know you do. That is why you are going anyway. Good luck, Danny. Make us proud. The connection ended. Danny turned to face his crew. There were 340 men and women aboard They were soldiers, engineers, doctors, and pilots. They had families back home. They had lives waiting for them. He could not order them to die for strangers. You all heard the signal, Danny said, his voice carrying across the bridge. There are millions of innocent people about to be killed. No one else in this galaxy will help them. We can reach them in time if we take a dangerous path. There is a good chance we will not survive. I am going. Anyone who wants to leave, I will not blame you. Take the shuttles and go home to your families. Silence filled the bridge. No one moved. Lieutenant, the weapons officer, spoke first. He was a young man, barely 25, with red hair and a quick smile. Captain, I did not join the fleet to run away from fights. I am with you. Chief Engineer Torres nodded. She was small and tough, with oil stains on her uniform and fire in her eyes. The goes where I go, and I am going with you. One by one, every person on the bridge spoke. The doctors, the pilots, the cooks and cleaners and technicians. Every single one of them chose to stay. Danny felt something warm in his chest, pride maybe, or love. Send a message to the crew in all sections, he said. Anyone who wants to leave has 30 minutes. 30 minutes passed, not a single person left. Danny sat in his captain's chair and looked at the stars. 9 days away, an entire species was about to die. They had given up hope. They believed no one cared. Set course for the slipstream corridor, Danny said. Maximum speed. We have a planet to save. The engines roared to life. The USS turned toward the distant light of the corridor and began to run. Behind them, human space grew smaller and smaller. Ahead of them, the unknown waited. They were one ship against 200. They had no backup, no support, no plan beyond arriving and fighting. Every calculation said they would fail. But Danny had stopped believing in calculations long ago. He believed in something else. He believed that when innocent people screamed for help, someone should answer. He believed that courage mattered more than odds. He believed that humans did not abandon those in need. The slipstream corridor opened before them like a wound in space, blue and terrible and beautiful. The ship shook as they entered it. Alarms screamed. The hull groaned under forces it was never designed to handle. And the USS flew on, burning through dimensions, racing toward a battle it could not win. Because somewhere out there, strangers were dying. And humanity was coming to save them. The 72 hours had passed. Ambassador stood on the observation deck of the Council Tower and watched the sky turn red. The weapons were charging. Great beams of energy gathered in the bellies of their warships, growing brighter and brighter. Soon they would fire, and the first city would fall. Millions had gathered in the streets below. They were not running anymore. There was nowhere to run. Instead, they held each other. Families pressed close together. Friends said goodbye. The elderly sang the old songs of peace, their voices rising toward the uncaring sky. Had stopped hopping hours ago. No one had answered his message. No one was coming. The galaxy had shown its true face, and that face was cold and empty. Warlord appeared on every screen across the planet. His cruel smile stretched wide across his scaled face. Your time is over, little birds. You should have surrendered when you had the chance. Now you will serve as an example. Every species in this galaxy will see what happens to those who stand in the way of the Dominion. Prepare for destruction. The weapons reached full charge. The lead dreadnought aimed its main cannon at the capital city. In seconds, everything loved would be gone. Then space itself tore open. A wound of blue fire appeared behind the fleet. It was wild and unstable, crackling with energy that bent light and reality. Every sensor on Velar Prime screamed warnings. Every ship turned to face the impossible rupture. Something came through. It was small, barely a speck compared to the dreadnoughts. Its hull was damaged, trailing smoke and fire. Its design was simple and brutal, all sharp angles and heavy armor. It looked like something that had crawled out of a battlefield and refused to die. For a long moment, nothing happened. The strange vessel hung in space, surrounded by 200 warships that could destroy it in an instant. Then it began to broadcast. The signal came on every frequency, in every language the galaxy knew. A voice spoke, rough and tired but absolutely calm. "This is Captain Danny of the USS, representing the United Earth Alliance. We are responding to your distress call. Velar Prime is now under human protection." Could not move. He could not breathe. Humans. The humans had come. The species that everyone ignored, the newcomers that no one respected, the primitives from the edge of space. They had crossed the galaxy to answer his hopeless message. The voice continued. "To the Dominion, you have one chance to withdraw your forces. Leave this system now and there will be no conflict. Refuse and we will defend these people with everything we have. You have 30 seconds to decide." On the flagship, Warlord stared at his tactical display. He could not believe what he was seeing. One ship. The humans had sent one ship to face his entire fleet. It was madness. It was suicide. It was almost funny. "Kill it," ordered. 50 vessels broke formation and moved toward their weapons locked on target. Their captains laughed at the tiny human ship. This would take only moments. It did not run. It did not beg. It did not try to negotiate. It attacked. Had been waiting at his weapons console, fingers steady on the controls. The moment the ships moved, he opened fire. The screamed, launching metal slugs at a fraction of the speed of light. Its missiles roared from their tubes, each one carrying enough explosives to shatter a small moon. The first ship exploded before anyone understood what was happening, then the second, then the third. The humans were not elegant fighters. They did not use precise, beautiful weapons designed for clean kills. Their weapons were ugly and brutal, designed for maximum damage. They were the weapons of a species that had spent its entire history fighting for survival. And they were terribly, terribly effective. On Velar Prime, the people looked up at the sky and saw fire blooming among the stars. They saw the tiny human ship dancing through the formation, dodging and weaving, striking again and again. They saw explosions where vessels had been. Hope returned, fragile and impossible but real. Watched 5 of his ships die in the first minute. He had never seen anything like this. The human vessel was damaged and alone, facing odds that should have crushed it instantly. But it was still fighting. It was actually gaining ground. "All ships," shouted, "concentrate fire on the human vessel, destroy it now." The entire fleet turned its attention to the 200 ships aimed their weapons at one small target. Captain Danny watched the tactical display and smiled grimly. "Well, we got their attention." Commander Lisa Vance gripped her console as the ship shook from a near miss. "We cannot survive concentrated fire from 200 ships, Danny. This was always a suicide mission." "Maybe," Danny said, "but we are not dead yet. How long can you keep us flying?" Chief Engineer Torres was already running toward the engine room, shouting orders to her team. "As long as you need, Captain. Just keep the shooting to a minimum." Danny almost laughed. No promises. The dove into the heart of the fleet. It was insane tactics, but Danny had learned long ago that insane tactics were sometimes the only way to survive. If he could get close enough to the enemy ships, they would hesitate to fire for fear of hitting each other. The battle became chaos. Weapons fire crisscrossed the void. Explosions lit up the darkness. The took hit after hit, its hull screaming, its systems failing. But it kept fighting. Every time the thought they had it cornered, it slipped away. Every time they lowered their guard, it struck back. On Velar Prime, Ambassador watched with tears streaming down his feathered face. He did not understand how the humans were still alive. He did not understand why they were here at all. They had no reason to help. They had everything to lose and nothing to gain. But they had come anyway. And they were fighting like nothing he had ever seen. The first hour ended with 17 ships destroyed. There was bleeding atmosphere and fire. Its weapons were running low. Its hull was cracked and torn. But it was still there, still broadcasting, still defying every calculation that said it should be dead. Danny wiped blood from a cut on his forehead and looked at the tactical display. They could not last much longer. They had hurt them badly, but there were still too many enemy ships. Sooner or later, luck would run out. Then Price shouted from her console, "Captain, multiple slipstream ruptures detected, more ships incoming." Danny held his breath. If they had called for reinforcements, this was over. But the ships that emerged were not. They were human. 3 vessels tore out of slipstream space, their hulls gleaming, their weapons already powering up. The USS Defiance, the USS Carolina. Each one carried a full complement of Marines and enough firepower to level a continent. Admiral's voice crackled over the communications channel. "This is Admiral. I could not let you have all the fun. Reinforcements have arrived. Let us finish this." For the first time in 16 hours, Danny smiled. The real battle was about to begin. Warlord had conquered 12 worlds. He had crushed rebellions and destroyed entire civilizations. He had never known fear in battle. His enemies always broke before him because the numbers were always on his side. But the numbers were changing. 3 more human ships had arrived, and his fleet was in chaos. The single vessel that should have died in the first minute was still fighting, still killing his ships, still refusing to accept the death that mathematics demanded. Now it had friends. "Regroup," shouted at his commanders. "Form defensive positions. They are still outnumbered." He was right. 4 human ships against nearly 200 vessels. The odds were still overwhelming. Any sensible enemy would have used the reinforcements to cover a retreat. The humans did not retreat. They attacked harder. The USS Defiance led the charge, its captain a woman named Rachel who had earned her reputation in the border wars. She drove her ship straight at the heart of the formation, drawing fire from a dozen vessels at once. Her shields flickered and failed. Her hull buckled and cracked. She kept coming. "All weapons fire at will," Captain ordered. "Make them remember this day." The Defiance unleashed everything it had. Missiles by the hundreds, rounds by the thousands. Point defense cannons turned outward, becoming offensive weapons, spraying metal into the void. 2 ships vanished in a single volley. 3 more followed seconds later. The USS swung wide, its captain using the chaos to position for flanking attacks. Lieutenant Commander Sam, a quiet man who never raised his voice, coordinated precision strikes that crippled engines and left warships drifting helplessly. The USS Carolina dove low, coming up beneath the fleet where their sensors were weakest. Its Marine commander, Sergeant Major Tony Blake, prepared boarding parties. When they found damaged ships, they would take them. And in the center of it all, the battered USS kept fighting. Tors had stopped counting the damage reports. Half the ship was in flames. 3 decks had lost atmosphere. The primary power core was failing. She kept it running through pure stubbornness, rerouting systems through pathways they were never designed to use, holding broken machinery together with emergency patches and prayers. "Captain," she shouted into the communicator, "I can give you weapons or engines, not both." "Give me weapons," Danny answered. "We are not running." I noticed. Was down to his last reserves of ammunition. His targeting computer had died an hour ago, so he was aiming manually, using skills he had learned in simulations and perfected in actual combat. Every shot had to count. Every missile had to find its target. He did not miss often. The battle raged for 2 more hours. The void around Velar Prime filled with debris and fire. Ships burned and broke and died. Human ships took terrible damage but refused to stop fighting. It was the most violent confrontation the galaxy had seen in centuries. Watched his fleet shrink, 50 ships lost, then 60, then 80. The humans were paying for every kill with blood and metal, but they were not stopping. Every time he thought they had nothing left, they found more. "What are these creatures?" one of his officers whispered. "Why do they not surrender?" Had no answer. He had studied the intelligence reports on humanity. They were young. They were primitive. They had no great history of conquest, no ancient warrior traditions. They should have been easy to defeat. But the reports had missed something. They had missed the fire that burned inside human hearts. They had missed the stubborn, relentless, absolutely insane refusal to accept defeat. They had missed the simple truth that humans did not fight because they expected to win. They fought because they believed it was right. "Warlord," another officer called out. "The human vessels are attempting to board our disabled ships. They are taking prisoners." Stared at the tactical display. The humans were not just killing his people. They were capturing them. They were being merciful. He did not understand. On the surface of Velar Prime, Ambassador watched the battle unfold. His people had gathered in the streets and plazas, their eyes fixed on the sky. They saw the flashes of weapons fire. They saw ships exploding. They saw the human vessels take hit after hit and keep fighting. "They are dying for us," whispered beside him. "They are strangers and they are dying for us. Why?" Shook his head slowly. "I do not know, but I will never forget this. None of us will." The fleet began to break. It started with the smaller vessels, the escorts and scouts that had no stomach for this kind of fight. They turned and ran, fleeing into the darkness of space. Then the larger ships followed, their captains deciding that survival mattered more than loyalty. Screamed orders, but no one listened. His fleet was routing. 200 ships had become 150, then 100, then 60. The humans were not even chasing them. They did not need to. They were destroying themselves through fear and chaos. "Warlord," his second-in-command said quietly. "We must withdraw. The battle is lost." Wanted to argue. He wanted to fight until the last ship was destroyed. But he was not a fool. He could see the truth. 4 human ships had broken his entire fleet. 4 ships and the insane courage of people who should have stayed home. "Fall back," ordered through clenched teeth. "All ships retreat to space." The withdrawal was ugly and desperate. Vessels crashed into each other in their haste to escape. They left their damaged ships behind, abandoning crews to human mercy. They ran like prey animals fleeing predators. The USS drifted among the debris, its engines finally dead, its weapons empty. Danny sat in his captain's chair and watched the enemy flee. Blood dripped from wounds he had ignored for hours. His uniform was torn and burned. He had never been so tired in his life. But they had won. "Captain," Price said, her voice trembling with exhaustion and joy. "They are in full retreat. Velar Prime is secure." Danny closed his eyes and let out a long breath. Around him, his crew was cheering, crying, hugging each other. They had done the impossible. They had saved a world. Lisa Vance put a hand on his shoulder. "We did it, Danny. We actually did it." "We did," Danny agreed. "Now let us go meet the people we just saved." The USS, barely holding together, limped toward Velar Prime. Behind it, the other human ships moved into protective positions around the planet. Below, millions looked up at the sky with tears in their eyes. They had thought no aid was coming. They had given up hope. And then humanity had arrived, howling from the void, to prove them wrong. The rescue shuttles descended through the purple sky of Velar Prime like gentle rain. Human medics, trained for battlefield trauma, rushed to help the injured. Healers who had never seen wounds from weapons worked beside them, learning as they went. Two species that had barely spoken before now worked together to save lives. Captain Danny stood at the entrance of his shuttle and looked out at the alien world. The floating cities were beautiful, even damaged as they were. They themselves were graceful creatures with feathers of blue and gold, their large eyes filled with emotions he could not name. Ambassador approached him slowly. The old's feathers had lost their color from stress and grief, but his eyes were bright. Behind him, thousands of his people watched in silence. Stopped before Danny and seemed to struggle for words. Finally, he spoke. "Captain, I sent a message into the void with no hope of an answer. You crossed the galaxy to die for people you had never met. I do not understand. My people do not understand. We have no words for what you have done. In our language, there is no concept for this kind of sacrifice." Danny looked at the ambassador. He thought about the question he knew was coming. He thought about the crew members he had lost, the friends who would never go home. He thought about every moment of terror during the battle, every time he had been certain they were about to die. And he thought about the millions of innocent people who were still alive, because his crew had refused to give up. "Ambassador," Danny said, "where I come from, when someone asks for help, you help them. It does not matter if they are strangers. It does not matter if the odds are against you. It does not matter if no one else will come. You help because helping is the right thing to do." Tilted his head, processing these words. "But you could have died. You nearly did die. Your ships are broken. Your people are wounded. Why would you risk so much for us?" Danny smiled tiredly. "Because if we do not help each other, what is the point of anything? We can travel between stars. We can build cities that float in the sky. We can do incredible things. But none of it means anything if we leave innocent people to suffer when we could have saved them." Was silent for a long moment. Then he did something no ambassador had ever done. He stepped forward and embraced the human captain, folding his wings around him in a gesture of profound gratitude. "My people will not forget," whispered. "For as long as they exist, we will remember what humanity did for us. Wherever you go, we will stand beside you. This I promise." The news of what happened at Velar Prime spread across the galaxy faster than any ship could travel. Every species in the Galactic Accord heard the story. A peaceful world had been abandoned by its allies, left to die by species that had sworn to protect it. And then, against all odds, the humans had come. The Accord held an emergency session. Some representatives demanded that humanity be punished for violating sovereignty protocols. They argued that the intervention had been illegal, that it set a dangerous precedent, that rules existed for a reason. The human ambassador, a patient woman named, listened to the complaints. Then she stood and spoke. "We heard people screaming for help," she said. "We were the only ones who answered. If that violates your protocols, then your protocols are wrong. Humanity will not apologize for saving innocent lives." She sat down. The chamber was silent. In the weeks that followed, representatives from dozens of species quietly reached out to Earth. They did not want grand alliances or formal treaties. They simply wanted to know if humanity would help them if they ever needed it. The answer was always yes. They were the first to make their loyalty official. They declared that wherever humanity went, they would follow. Their scientists began working with human engineers. Their artists created songs and paintings celebrating the Battle of Velar Prime. Their children learned the names of the human ships and crew members who had saved their world. Far away in space, Warlord sat alone in his chambers and studied the reports. His fleet had been humiliated. His reputation was destroyed. Other warlords were already circling, sensing weakness. But that was not what haunted him. He kept returning to one simple fact. Humanity had been in the galaxy for only 15 years. They had few ships, limited resources, no powerful allies. By every measure, they were one of the weakest species in known space. And yet they had crossed the galaxy to fight a war they could not win, for people they did not know. No other species would have done that. No other species had even considered it. Had conquered 12 worlds by understanding his enemies. He knew how to break species that calculated costs and benefits. He knew how to defeat species that fought only when they were certain of victory. But he did not know how to fight an enemy that did not care about the odds. He did not know how to defeat a species that chose to die for strangers rather than live with doing nothing. For the first time in his life, was afraid. On Earth, the crew of the USS returned to heroes' welcomes. Parades filled the streets. Medals were awarded. Politicians made speeches about courage and sacrifice. Danny accepted the honors quietly. He shook hands and smiled for cameras and said the right things. But his mind was elsewhere. He kept thinking about the children who had looked up at him with wonder in their eyes. He kept thinking about Ambassador's promise. 6 months later, he retired from active service. The admirals offered him any command he wanted, but he was tired of war. Instead, he took a teaching position at the Fleet Academy. On his first day, a classroom full of young cadets looked at him with awe. They all knew his story. They all wanted to be like him. "Captain," one cadet asked, "what did it feel like to save an entire world?" Danny thought about the question for a long moment. "It felt right," he finally said. "The galaxy is full of species who look at a crisis and calculate whether helping is worth the cost. They count their ships. They measure the risks. They decide that someone else should handle it. That is why they were abandoned. Everyone else decided it was not their problem." He looked at each young face in the room. "I want you to be different. I want you to be the people who never ask that question. When innocents are suffering and you can help, you help. Period. It does not matter how dangerous it is. It does not matter if no one else will come. You help because that is who we are. That is what makes humanity worth the name." The cadets sat in silence, absorbing his words. Years passed. Human vessels began patrolling further and further from Earth. They were not conquerors, they were protectors. When distress signals came, they answered. When peaceful worlds were threatened, they intervened. They asked for nothing in return. Other species began to follow their example. They built their first warships, designed to fight alongside human allies. They quietly increased their own patrols near vulnerable worlds. Even they started responding to calls for help they would have ignored before. The galaxy was changing. Slowly, painfully, species were learning that strength meant more than numbers and weapons. Real strength was standing up for those who could not stand for themselves. And on Velar Prime, in the central plaza of the rebuilt capital, a statue stood against the purple sky. It was not of Ambassador or any hero. It was a simple sculpture of a battered human warship, its nose pointed toward the stars, its engines forever burning. A plaque at its base read, "When our world was dying and all hope was gone, they came from across the galaxy to save us. They asked nothing in return. They taught us that courage matters more than calculations, that kindness matters more than treaties, and that strangers can become the best of friends." Humanity answered when no one else would. Below the plaque, in smaller letters, was the human saying that had become famous throughout culture. "Because you asked for help, where we come from, that means something." Children played around the statue. Parents told them stories of the battle. Old who remembered the siege touched the metal with reverent hands. And somewhere in the vastness of space, human ships flew on, ready to answer the next call. Because that was who they were. And that would never change.